Hi, welcome to the podcast Growing Older with Gusto, our latest episode today. And I'm Gail Zuckerman, the host with another exciting guest who's definitely growing older with gusto and helping others to do that too. My personal experience as I'm growing older is the need for Pilates to keep my back in tip-top shape so I can enjoy doing some of the activities I love, like biking, swimming, and playing golf. So today, our guest is Shane Keith Rhoads. He's a professional trainer who turned his background in education into a Pilates, rehab, and medical exercise studio and a business which he calls Med Movement. And the business that he started in 2017 is unique in that he has created an environment for people to experience Pilates, but other types of rehab exercise also. He has a lot to share about his evolution, so let's bring him on. Welcome to the show, Shane.
Hi, Gail. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. I'm curious, in talking to you, I know you started out in a way that is probably a little bit more unconventional than somebody just starting a Pilates studio. So could you talk about how you got into the business of integrating body and mind?
Okay. I'll go backwards to tell you where the first like light up moment.
Okay.
So I've been in fitness probably over 30 years now. I started, it was on a sophomore in college at Goodyear Fitness Center and corporate fitness. My major was exercise physiology and then sports medicine. So working with athletes. I was an athlete at the time, so I was enamored with like working with athletes. So in grad school, I was a strength and conditioning coach for college sports teams and an athletic trainer, the guys who take care of injuries, tape ankles. I had to put a lot of hours in and I had very limited time. So I asked them, like, can I count my weight room strength coach hours as sports medicine hours? And they're like, no. But if you become like the last phase rehab guy in the weight room, we'll count those hours. And then I kind of fell in love with like working with people in that last transition from injury to full health again. And that kept me still in sports because I went into professional baseball after that, had a private business after that. And then did some other things. But at some point, I remember reading an article about Pilates. And this is this time when like Pilates was kind of getting a Windsor Pilates was
So
on
what
TV.
what year was that, would you say?
1989, was in school. Let's say
The
90s.
reason I asked Shane is that,
Yeah,
I'm hooked on Pilates. And I know from talking to people that Pilates has evolved from when Joseph Pilates introduced it to the world, from being classical and helping dancers to being part of a rehab program. So I was just curious.
so 96, 97,
Mhm.
say right there, I was like looking for some new avenue and I came across an article. And as I was saying, Pilates was starting to be in the public eye, but more from like the celebrities doing it. And it was on TV. And I saw this article on rehabilitation in the Pilates setting. Brent Anderson of Polestar Pilates. And it just clicked. It's like this system and equipment can allow me to do almost everything with someone. And it's a long term longevity type exercise routine. It's non impactful. It works on all the mobility and the stability you need. And there's a lot of variety. And something you can do for a lifetime. So that appealed to me because I can help rehab people or help them with their medical conditions get fit, and I can keep doing it until they're 100 years old. We have a client here who's 96.
Wow.
So
When
that was
when did that client start doing Pilates?
never asked her. She works with one of the other instructors, but um,
Wow.
wow. So it appealed to me in that way. And then I kind of decided to go full into Pilates and got trained, and I worked at a number of Pilates studios over the years until I started my own business, which Movement Med.
So again, I know that you've talked to me a little bit in our conversations about the integration, I should say, of people's trying to take care of their body, but also their mind. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think one of the appealing parts of the Pilates environment is there's a focus on mindfulness and breath work, why you're learning to move more efficiently and why you're either strengthening the right muscles or trying to get more mobile. And there's other forms like yoga that does the same thing, but I think that putting it all together is more appealing and I think more effective. Um,
Well, I know for myself, I've been a longtime fan of yoga, and I recently started Pilates a few years back, and it is very different. The breathing is very different because you're actually breathing when you're doing the exercises in Pilates, whereas in yoga, it's usually you start out with a breathing exercise and then you proceed to doing the physical part of yoga.
I think there's a number of things, but the breath work will help you learn to calm yourself while you're stressing yourself, if that makes sense.
Right, right. It does.
Helps
It's a
you
challenge. I have to tell you, it's a challenge.
to learn properly. So part of the appeal for it is you're learning how to move more efficiently besides just getting stronger. And I think it takes slowing down in your mind to help your
Yeah.
brain pick up that, like when you're learning a dance routine.
Mhm. Right. That's interesting.
So
It's an
fast.
interesting point. Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
There's a lot of health benefits to just good breath work as well. And Joe Pilates, from the very beginning, that was one of his first core principles was breath. He
Wow.
always, I think his statement was, it's the first and last act of life, so you better get it right.
I like that. I really like that. It's a good
Yeah.
quote. What about this movement from classic to more rehab? When did that take place? Was that in the past 5 years, 10 years, or
No, I think it's longer than that. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Joe. I can tell a little quick story on Joe.
Sure. That'd be great.
Joe Pilates, sickly child, asthma, became really interested in physical culture or exercise at the time to improve himself. And he literally did run away with the circus. So at one point, he was in England. So this is right when the war broke out. So 1914, he was teaching self defense to Scotland Yard detectives
Wow.
and went to a tournament camp at the Isle of Man. So while he was in a tournament camp, he decided to teach exercise to all the other prisoners of war. And then he started working in the hospital to help patients. And that's where, whether it's true or not, he got the idea of using the springs because he would use the springs to attach it to their limbs, help them start moving sooner, which is way ahead of its time because we used to just like cast people and leave them there, whether that's true or not. So he came out after the war released and went back to Germany, where he continued to kind of cultivate his perfect mat routine. Classical Pilates is very familiar with the Joe Pilates mat routine, which is supposed to be, and it is a full encompassing routine that covers your whole body, teaches you fitness and wellness and mobility and strength. And all those exercises in a sequence are supposed to be the perfect routine. And then the machines, which he got the initial idea from his time in the camp, were supposed to help you do the mat routine better. I think, not to get off our topic, I think the machines is where the rehab professionals started playing around with them because I always tell people no one can come through my door without having a positive movement experience. We have spinal cord injured clients to like 95-year-old clients to like healthy people. And you can use this environment or these machines to set up situations where you can have success.
Hmm.
And you can't always have that on a floor routine at first. So it made a lot of sense. And I
That
think,
happened to me because I started out on the floor, and depending on who was teaching, you know, it was either I liked it or I didn't like it. I had kind of a love-hate relationship with the mat Pilates. And when I got onto the machines, I just absolutely fell in love with Pilates. And then
yeah,
now, more recently in the past year, so I've used it as a rehab uh, form of exercise. But
I think it helped you have success
mhm,
and be in your body. And sometimes when you're a little challenged on something, you can't have that positive experience. It's harder to like, you know,
right,
the right instructor is going to bring you along with the machines to get you to a point where you can do those other things and it feels good.
right. Well, tell our listeners a little bit about why Pilates is really the best, to me, a really good long-term health approach as we grow older with gusto.
Yeah, I think it's low impact. That's first, and it's a focus on all the elements of health. Strength, mobility, flexibility, mindfulness, breath work we spoke of. There's probably not a large cardiovascular element, but I always tell people what we do in here is going to enable you to do what out there more efficiently and without pain. So you can't, or you can take up a dance class. So I think that it helps you able to add that into your life, if that makes sense.
It does. And I know that I've experienced really having building up the heat when I'm doing Pilates. So I don't know, what is that all about? It's like, no, it's not cardiovascular, but I'm still
Sometimes
um,
when you focus really hard, it just makes everything start working harder.
oh,
But
anyway,
go ahead.
there's so much information out there on how to grow older, both physically and mentally these days. And how do you recommend to our listeners, how do you navigate the fitness world while growing older?
Well, that's a big challenge, I think, for some people, because if you understand social media and algorithms, you can go down the wrong algorithm and get fed all kinds of like 20-year-olds doing advanced exercises that you should not even be trying. I think there's organizations out there. First and foremost, let me back up. Finding someone who's able to help you, who has that experience with either working with seniors or working with medical conditions in exercise. I mean, your doctor is a good start, but I'm talking to the day-to-day people to help you. It's not always financially feasible to work one-on-one with someone. So finding the right classes and that's seeking out the right types of studios that are more conducive to your age and goals. There are organizations though you can look up online. There's the Healthy Aging Association. There's the International Active Aging Association, Medical Fitness Association, Medical Exercise Association. So putting in the right keywords, you can find it. There's good information online for senior exercise or exercise with medical conditions, which is another aspect of what we were talking about.
I wish there was another word for seniors. Okay.
Yeah. 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 Mitch, I was
Haven't thought of one yet, but if you do, let me know.
wiser.
What else would you like to talk about? I know that there's new things in store for Med Movement. Do you want to talk a little bit to our listeners about that? What's next for you?
Well, at Movement Med, we always talk about here, we're trying to help as many people as we can. And we first started out with we're kind of more of a one-on-one personal training type model. This year, we're launching more small group specialty classes geared towards conditions. We have a Steady Steps program for balance. We have always had a long time chronic back program that I've ran, but we're going to now do it in a small 3 or 4 person format. We're trying to add some online libraries to those so people can help at home. And there's a pelvic health program we're rolling out too. And then we have a Parkinson's program too.
Wow, what are you doing for Parkinson's?
Well, we're going to start in the fall, a small group class. For years, we've been trying for grants for it, but we're just going to launch it anyways. And because we have made a lot of connections in that community. So one of my instructors is diving deep into the Parkinson's world, and that's going to be her specialty. But there'll be 3 to 5 to 6 people, really small group,
Hmm.
and a sequence of education and exercise over time.
Doing boxing with the Parkinson's?
Boxing it's more like the strength and mobility and balance work that
Okay.
complements. Seems a real popular Parkinson's.
That's what I heard. That's why I asked. Yeah. That's exciting. And what about you offer massages? Don't you also at your
Yeah, massage, myofascial work. We have a rolfer as well here at the studio. So we did add that this year.
tell us about that. Tell us why that's an important complement to everything else that you're offering.
I think sometimes you just run into problems you can't solve. Some of your aches and pains with just movement and exercise. Although us movement professionals like our yoga and Pilates would like to think so. Sometimes it's nice to have someone who's professional and educated hands to help you relieve tension patterns in, say, fascia or muscle tissue.
Mhm.
And that's going to help complement what we're trying to do within the studio.
So, out of all the types of massage therapies that you offer, what would you say is probably the best for somebody who has like severe spinal stenosis?
Well, all my 3 people here that do massage are all clinically trained, so they've worked in clinical environments. So I think that's first and foremost. You're looking for someone who can understand what you're dealing with. and work away from the area of pain and address, like I say, upstream and downstream where those tension patterns are starting. Because sometimes stuff like stenosis or disc herniations, you still have to move. If you become too sedentary, it deteriorates it well. So, how do we get your body able to manage that spine and move more efficiently to cause less stress to it? So, part of that's being stronger in the right areas, mobile in the right areas. And part of that's you have these tension patterns in your fascial tissue or muscle that someone like the massage therapist we have could help relieve that without
Yeah.
regress exacerbating symptoms.
It's interesting. That's really interesting. Well, Shane, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you might want to add to the conversation?
Tell me about how long have you been doing Pilates?
Well, I've been doing Pilates, maybe this is my second year. I mean, full time, like trying to make it consistent. I did do mat Pilates for a while off and on, but it was something, as I mentioned earlier, I really didn't like. And I had to particularly, I was taking it in a group, in a class format, and I had to really like the teacher in order to do it. It was, as I said, a love hate relationship with mat Pilates. So doing it regularly, probably 2 years.
I think the Pilates is growing still. It's been doing for a long time, but it's taken on a lot of different, as far as like a fitness business aspect, a little off of different avenues. So you have places line where we're working a lot of one-on-one and trying to help treat conditions or improve your posture and long-term health. And you have big group places that are it's more about the experience of harder exercise, loud music, and you have places in between. I think that's the hardest thing for everyone to navigate is when they hear Pilates. Especially, I used to say when a doctor would say, "Go do Pilates for your back." Well, if you walk into the wrong place,
That's true. You're absolutely right. And I know somebody who actually said, "Oh, I'm having back surgery because of Pilates." I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?"
yeah, that's like in anything where you're hiring the right professionals. But I think the mat work, the biggest challenge was it was very lucrative for studios to start just doing group classes on machines. And except for the pure classical studios, I'm sure they do phenomenal mat stuff. The really good instructors just wanted to stay on the machine. So I had a person who learned from me years ago when I was in San Diego, and all she wanted to do with mat. She became like the greatest mat teacher ever. And there are people out there like that, are purists. That's more about getting their background if you're going to go that route. Because I think it's beautiful work, the mat work. It's just you got to have the right person to bring you along if it's too challenging for your body at first.
Right. Is there anything like a step-by-step program where you do mat and then you progress to the machines or you do them together? How does that work in the world of Pilates?
Well, I see it like in here all the time with my instructors. I see them doing mat work and then also using the machine for areas that like you may not be as good or strong to help complement that. Like I think originally Joe intended the machines to help you prepare you for doing this perfect mat routine. I think that's probably the best way to do that. Like, you know, you can still find that really enamored mat Pilates teacher who's going to take their time and teach you how to do a perfect mat routine. I think same thing in yoga. I think you come across the same thing in yoga.
Okay.
So
Interesting. That's true. That is very true. There's nothing like a really committed teacher who's excellent at what they do.
yeah, you got to you're working with someone, so you got to like their personality and their approach.
Right,
You know,
right. Absolutely. Well, this has been really great, really interesting. How can our listeners find their way to Mad Movement?
so movementmedchicago.com is the best
Oh,
way to
okay. Okay.
Instagram. We're at Movement Med and Movement Med Chicago on Facebook. We're on Instagram and our website. I don't do too much on Facebook.
Okay. I understand. Anyway, thanks for being on the show. This has been really interesting. I've learned a lot too, and I'm sure my listeners will too. So, thank you for being on the show. And to our listeners, remember to stay curious and stay connected and drop me a comment if you like to. And you can find us on any podcast platform and on our YouTube channel, Growing Older with Gusto. Thanks, Shane. Have a great day.